Welcome to the BLTnT podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTnT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. All right, welcome to a new episode of the BLTnT podcast. I'm Matt Loria, and I'm sitting here with someone you might remember from a previous episode, Elise Fisher, from episode 22.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you for being here. And Amy Gillard. Amy is the executive director of the Harbor Springs Festival of the Book. And so that's an organization who, I'm going to read it myself if you don't.
Go for it.
The Harbor Springs Festival of the Book is a 3-day gathering of traditionally published authors and illustrators held each year in September. So it is actually quite well known. It was not well known to me until it was introduced to me by Elise, and then now further by you. So I'm here to share this with our constituency of friends of the BLTnT podcast and make sure that they know about it too. And so kind of an odd mixture, right? I mean, most people that are watching our podcast are probably scratching their heads and saying, "Why are you doing this?" And we've got really good reason though. So, Amy, can you give us a little background of a better definition of what the Harbor Springs Festival of the Book is all about, and then tell me a little bit about your background and how you found this joint?
Sure, happy to, and thanks for having me today and us. So, and we'll make that connection.
We will
soon. The Harbor Springs Festival of the Book, as you mentioned, is a 3-day literary festival that happens in Harbor Springs. We take over town and create. Pretty much, it feels like a college campus. For 3 days of programming, we invite traditionally published authors and illustrators in 7 different genres. And maybe if you see pictures behind me, these are some of the authors who are coming this year. And what we do is curate programming that allows our attendees to experience some of the most creative minds right now in the world of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, cookbooks, middle grade authors, young adult authors, and children's picture books. We invite them to town, they spend the weekend with us, and we interact with them over the course of the 3 days, approximately 45 sessions throughout those 3 days, and just have an absolutely wonderful time talking about the words and wonder and wisdom of books and the written word.
That's fantastic. There was something you guys told me about, and I don't remember the actual full-on details, but just to give people a little bit of a taste, the authors engage with students as part of the program?
So part of the program, correct, is on Friday of the festival, we send all of our picture book, middle grade, and young adult authors into area schools. And they have an opportunity to do sessions with them. We work with the schools to create what's the best program for children all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. And the authors come in, maybe they're doing a drawing session with second graders, or maybe they're talking in a panel with another young adult author for high school students who are interested in writing. One of the other things that we also do in conjunction with that program is if an author is going into a classroom, we try to give all the students a copy of that author's book. So not only are they meeting the author, but they also get to take home their own personal book that they get to add to their personal library, which we feel is really important.
Isn't there something where they're walking around the town too and engaging? What was that all about?
Well, so authors are scheduled then, all the school authors then are scheduled into programming on Saturday and Sunday. And the sessions are in 3 different parks. We use the Performing Arts Center at the high school. We use the Lyric Theater. We use our local library, and we use our history museum. So sessions are happening all over town, and people then just move from session to session to session. What makes it nice is the authors are also participating as attendees. They may do a session at 9:00, but they may go to a 10:30 session. And so you could be sitting in your session listening to a panel, but also have another author sitting right next to you. So there's great accessibility for our attendees and for our authors to experience what town is like. They can go across to any of our coffee shops and get a cup of coffee and talk with people. They can go into Hani's Gallery and be looking at jewelry to take something home to a significant other. And so it really gives the authors a chance to really invest in the community and see what we have. And it also allows the attendees to have that same kind of opportunity because
Great.
everybody's walking around and moving from place to place.
Fantastic. Elise Fisher is one of the owners of Nub's Knob ski area in this region in Harbor Springs. And she was on our episode 22 talking about mostly about the interaction at almost the CEO level, board level that you have there, that you're on there with your engagement with the management team who runs day-to-day operations. And so one of the things that you were talking about with me was this Festival of the Book. I had no idea what it was. You then told me that you're the chair of the board right now, and so it got me interested. I called my wife and told her that that sign at the top of the hill, we now have to pay attention to it because Elise is involved in this. But we also had another unique interaction. So I learned about the festival from you on the episode, and then a few months later, we get the family text that says Rebecca Mix, our soon-to-be daughter-in-law, got accepted as one of the authors, as one of the invited authors. And so she says, "You don't understand how big of a deal this is." And I'm thinking, well, yes, I do, because I know what this is all about. But what a great honor. And so just I love the cosmos brought us all together on this, in this platform to be able to talk about it and have all these nice, neat connections. Elise, give us a little bit of background for the people who maybe didn't watch episode 22. Tell them what you're all about, and let's talk about how you got to be part of the Harbor Springs Festival of the Book.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I'm involved in this community in a lot of different ways, and I think that's what's so unique about Harbor Springs and actually Emma County, and I'll include Petoskey, et cetera. But we're a very closely knit family, and I knew nothing about the festival, I'll be quite honest. And a friend said, "You've never heard of it? You don't know what's going on? Come with me and attend some of the sessions." So I did. I got hooked immediately on the panels. They put together amazing programming. And so one thing kind of led to another, and then another good friend of mine who is very much a part of this community said, maybe you'd be interested in getting more involved. And I said, well, possibly. And within, maybe the next year, another friend who actually was chair of this organization, Maureen Abood, she invited me to her porch for coffee. And she's a cookbook author, so she had delicious treats as we were mulling over what the Harbor Springs Festival of the Book is. And within an hour, I was so sold on the concept and felt so invited to be a part of this organization. And I wasn't formally asked yet, of course, to be on the board, but I could really see and feel the uniqueness of it. And here again, as I mentioned a minute ago, I was not an avid reader, but it has totally absorbed me in so many ways. And it's just another thing that our community has to share and grow and enrich all of the members here. So that's how I kind of got started with it and involved. And it kind of plays into just being, a business owner, but then being able to give back in other genres of the community. So that's how I kind of got started.
Yeah, and from the areas that I know you from, board member is becoming part of your professional resume for sure, and you've really become noted in the area of being quite successful at it and very impactful in those roles. So I'm sure the group here is very lucky to have you in your role.
Well, thank you. I do love the governance level of an organization. I was steeped in business from my family, and I was taught the layers of business and how it can be very effective if you do it properly. And part of that is with the governance, understanding governance versus management, and also trusting the right people because it comes back and it makes for a very stable organization.
You know, I just got done shooting. I don't know which one we'll post first, but my friend Paul Glantz, who owns the Imagine Theater chain, I always compliment him on his ability to trust others, which has really helped him, grow his organization. And how has that worked for you with your interactions with, at the board level here with management of the festival?
I think it has, I know it has allowed Amy as executive director to really use her skill set, which she has a very wide and deep skill set, and let her to be more creative and go out there and not have any restraints and do what she does best. And I think she has a better use of her time. She's not putting out little fires, and she's got the support of the board. And I think, Amy, don't you think it's worked out that way, giving you more autonomy and doing what she does best?
Yeah, I think that as the organization has grown, we started we're a nonprofit organization, so working with the board, and what does that mean, and when you start a nonprofit, many times your board members are your biggest volunteers and your biggest worker bees. And so as we've grown, right now I'm one of 10. I'm the only full-time employee. I have 2 part-time people, but I also have 7 people who are very project-based, working to create all of the elements of the festival. And so we have a team now that really can advance the festival in significant ways, allowing the board to work on what they're charged with, which is a fiduciary responsibility to help us create the festival and produce the festival, and governance. So it's really giving us that opportunity now as we enter our 10th, the next decade. We're celebrating our 10th year this year. As we launch into this next decade, to really take everything to the next level, including how the board operates and how they interface with the organization.
Great. Okay. So actually, the interesting thing is your organization is maybe just a year younger than my organization. So certainly at some point, I want to talk about kind of the evolution of how an organization kind of develops, right? And we can, I guess we can do that right now. I remember the early days of our organization. It just felt like a lot of horsepower, right? And you and I were talking the other day, and you were telling me how, you've worked with some really impressive organizations, and maybe we should start there before we talk about the kind of the life cycle of an organization.
Sure.
Let's tell everybody a little bit about your background, because it's really steeped in managing some pretty impressive events.
I grew up, let's even start there, on the other side of the state. I grew up in a small town called Spruce in Alcona County, which is just south of Alpena. Went to high school there, and then went to Alma College in Alma, Michigan, and then went to the University of Vermont for my graduate program. And Elise and I found out that she went there as an undergrad, and I was there as a graduate student. We weren't there at the same time, but it's fun to have that connection to be.
Did you go there because you wanted to ski? Because I remember that was her major deciding factor.
Yeah, I did know. At the time, it had the program the best program in the nation. One of the other similar programs was at Ohio State, and as a Michigander, I just couldn't find myself in Ohio and at Michigan State, or at Ohio State, so UVM had the best program at that time.
And what was that program?
It was an educational administration.
Okay.
So it was everything non-academic at a college or university. And then right after that, I moved to Kansas City. And I spent the summer between my first and second year of Kansas City because my sister was working there. And I stayed with her, and I met a man at the time who was working for the Kansas City Chiefs. And when I decided to look for a professional position after I graduated from graduate school, I wanted to work in alumni or fundraising. You don't move to a college or a community and say, okay, now what colleges are here? You just send out your resume to colleges that have positions posted. And the week that I moved to Kansas City, Mitch, who I'd worked with at the Chiefs, was promoted to director of his department. And 2 weeks later, he asked me to work for him. So my very first professional job was with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I did that for 6 years. And our office was responsible for all the game production, advertising and marketing, ticket sales, and corporate sponsorships. And at the end of my career, after 6 years with them, I was the person who coordinated all the logistics of all the corporate sponsorships. Much smaller staff than what you might look on a roster now at the Chiefs. There were 7 of us that were full-time employees. I think now they have 50 in those areas. So very different, but loved it. Then after that, Mitch left the organization close to when I did and started his own sport marketing agency. And with that, then I went back to work for him and ended up in corporate sponsorships with Sprint. We were the agency of record for Sprint corporate sponsorship. So at the time, they had just signed on for World Cup soccer. Intimately involved with that. Then in the mid-90s, Sprint had signed the largest contract with the NFL and managed many aspects then of that relationship with all the individual teams and the league. I've been to 6 Super Bowls. We did projects with the Major League Baseball Players Association, the National Hockey League. We were LPGA, PGA. They were also did projects with the U.S. Ski Team and Snowboard Association. At the NCAA was based in Kansas City at that time, so we did projects with the NCAA. We also did projects with the U.S. Olympic Committee. So I've coordinated and worked on projects in just about every professional field but lacrosse, and I've never done a collegiate football game. But anything else, that's what happened.
We'll have Jackie share up the impressive platter of logos that you have that you've been associated with. It's really interesting.
I've been very fortunate and had a wonderful career, and most of my focus has been on event management within those organizations. Then there came a point where I decided to hang out my own shingle, and so I did that. I also knew at some point in time I wanted to move back to Michigan. I was the only member of my family that was far away. So after the passing of my father, I said, okay, it's time to move back. And because I'd hung out my own shingle and because I was doing my own thing, I had clients that were in many places, but it didn't matter where I lived because it basically is now the working remote opportunity. So I moved back to Michigan. I got involved with people in the book industry, actually at McLean & Aiken Booksellers in Petoskey, and met people who I now work with now in the festival.
Great.
For years then we had a great relationship. Friendships just grew. They knew what I was doing from the event management side. So when the festival came into fruition, and it started with 4 people just having a conversation about wouldn't it be great to create a literary festival? And one of them was Katie Beckel, who was the owner of Between the Covers bookstore, but had grown up selling books at McLean & Aiken. And then the publisher of the local newspaper here in Harbor Springs, and then 2 of his writers, and one was a published young adult author. They were the ones that had the genesis of the idea to say, wouldn't it be great to do this? And I knew all of those people. And when they started, then they asked me to come in and just consult on a operations standpoint. Like, okay, we're doing this. How do we do it? And I said, I can help you with that. I can't be involved more than just in a consulting standpoint because I still had other commitments to my other clients. And so when the first festival launched, I also got brought in to help with author logistics. And then after the first festival, there was a change in leadership, and I applied for the position of executive director. And since February of 2017, I've been the executive director, and we're now launching our 10th festival.
Great.
So
I've been hearing a lot lately about the knock. When an employee knocks on your office door and says, got a minute? And you immediately know it's some sort of IT incident. But Oxium IT can help. Whether you're having a problem, need consulting, an upgrade, or a managed IT approach, they focus on preventing cyber attacks and proactive solutions that deliver results. My friend Matt Loria and everyone at Oxium are ready to help before or after you get the knock. Visit Oxium.com and let Oxium IT help you outsmart chaos.
You know, one of the most interesting things to me that in doing this, right, in interviewing and talking to people and having these discussions and recording them, is the realization, you know, and a lot of people say, you know, God put you here, right, for a reason. And, you know, the thing that I continue to realize is that you are uniquely qualified to be right where you are doing exactly what you're doing.
Can I say amen?
Amen, sister.
And I will say amen too. Yeah.
It's just, it never gets lost on me when I'm talking to folks and seeing it's like, you see all these little connections up right to, and it builds up to right where you're supposed to be. And so I think that's just so cool that that's you, and that's what you're doing, and that you're here. You did mention the bookstore that's actually connected to this building here, and Katie.
Right.
And so let's talk about, because I want to talk about the structuring of organizations and structuring of your organization. The fact that this organization has a structure is something that kind of came over time. So let's just first start by saying, so you're the executive director, which what your main focus is the event. Is that correct? For yourself, your major focus?
Correct. And fundraising, yes, making the event happen, and working with a staff that have key responsibilities in other areas, because there are so many other areas that have to happen. But I help manage those individuals, as well as doing logistics myself, confirming venues, tents,
and
those types of things.
The difference between you and what Katie does, so Katie really works directly with the authors. Is that correct?
Katie's our literary director.
Okay.
And within the structure of the organization, what happens is we have an author committee, and we have people that sit on that committee that have experience in the publishing or the writing world. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is Katie works with that committee to collect submissions, both from the publishing world. We have a call out to those two publishers across the country, large and small. We also work with past presenters who say, oh my gosh, I have a friend who's writing a book and would be perfect for your festival. We look at those submissions as well. We also have an opportunity for people to self-submit and have criteria that we have authors look at to say, if you fit our criteria, you're happy to submit your work. The author committee then looks at all of those authors based on the individual genres. And Katie helps us look to prioritize who we might want to give an invitation to, because this is a by-invitation festival. You can't just submit your work and be accepted. You don't
just pay the fee and
there's no fee for that to be able to do that. So you have to be invited to attend and to be able to participate in our programming. And then what happens is, once the authors are selected, then the magic starts to happen. We're looking at who can talk about topics. So authors aren't coming in and just one author talking about their book and then leaving. We have panels that have topics. And for example, going down the rabbit hole of research, you could have a panel with a middle grade author who has delved into historical characters and doing research. You could have a poet who has done a whole book about the West. And you could have a nonfiction author who has written specifically about the gold rush. And those three people, from nonfiction, poetry, and middle grades, like, how are you going to put them together? But they're going to talk about their process. They're going to talk about going down the rabbit hole of research.
Sure.
So that makes it unique. And then there are some broad topics that are always interesting. A sense of place as a character. And so magically, and not magically, there's no magic wand. Sometimes we wish there was, but Katie just understands the industry. She understands the book. She understands the content of all of them, and can look and see how a conversation can be formed amongst these two or three people in a conversation to talk about their book that they've come to promote, but also to talk about the broader topic, which expands and gives the audience and attendees a greater opportunity to listen in on that discussion, which is is more developed and more creatively curated.
Sure.
And those conversations are just, though, that's what's magic.
So what I'm seeing from the excuse me from the business end of things here is that you guys have a well-defined roles and responsibilities,
Yes.
which normally doesn't happen right off the rip. So in talking about the process of the life cycle of an organization and its growth and its maturation, we know that early on, like I said, we're about the same age in business years of the, you start off with a lot of horsepower. Then you start to delegate and separate of, okay, these are strength areas of each individual. You put a structure to the organization. Let's talk about the system. And I think there was a quote that you gave us. Was it the CFO from the Chiefs?
CFO from the Chiefs, who always used to say, the system is the solution.
Okay.
And that is critical in any organization, be it nonprofit or for-profit. And so when we started, the staff was much smaller. And as we grew as an organization, we realized there were opportunities to focus on key areas. We have one person just doing author logistics. We have another person doing housing and transportation. We have another person just doing volunteer coordination.
My guess is that when this started, though, I'll bet you that there was board members and staff that were all volunteers, and everybody was,
It looked like
all hands on deck. And
right, and those positions
everybody's
didn't
running.
exist, but knew as we grew as an organization that certain areas really needed to be focused on, so we could continue to do it right and do it better all the time. And so, like, one person just manages venues. And then we have someone just coordinating registration once we got into the registration part of it. And now we had one person just doing school visits. Now we have 3 people. We have one person just coordinating the programming and establishing the programming and working with Katie as the literary director. We have one person just doing the logistics with the schools. And then we have one person coordinating the volunteers who host the authors as they go into the schools.
Well, there's really a continuum or a sliding scale or whatever you want to say, graduation of not for profits, right? Sometimes they get the rap of that they're not exceptionally organized. I mean, the smaller ones, and then as you see, these nonprofits can be essentially worldwide. You guys are doing that with a relatively small staff and a decent sized budget. Really segregating this neatly with the way the board operates and the way that the staff does. So Elise, can you talk about kind of how the board has maybe been able to evolve to really play its role on focus on governance and fiduciary responsibilities?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, our 5-year strategic plan is coming to an end, so we're engaging in a new 3 to 5 year strategic plan, and it's happening as I'm sitting here. So we have actually engaged a facilitator to help us with this, and it's been very valuable. We've met as a small group, some board members, some not board members, and we've had 2 meetings, and we're letting the things that we feel are really valuable going forward for this organization now after being here for 10 years. And we've re-identified some of the old strategies and freshened up some of the things that we want to look forward to. And this facilitator has allowed us to really brainstorm and put a lot on the table, but she's narrowing us down to like 3 to 5 goals strategy. And I think that's been very helpful. And we've talked about in these sessions what growth means. And growth for us is not numbers, because we're at our limit as far as what this town and our venues can handle, but making it better and the product better and the experience better, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like to have more diversity in our attendees, and that we're working on, but we really are engaged in this process of strategy for the next 3 to 5 years and narrowing it down and really being able to address it and accomplish it.
Well, we talked about it. It's interesting when you talk about growth, right? It's not necessarily just more people jammed into the small town. That's not going to work.
Right.
We had talked about that it could be an expansion of the offering throughout the year, right? So the beachhead of this organization is the event and the festival itself.
Right.
But there's 363 other days. How many days is the festival? Three?
Three.
362 other days
Yeah.
on most years that you can affect change and provide value in the world. So what are some of the concepts that you guys are coming up with there to expand that outward value?
Well,
Sure.
we're looking at a number of things right now. We haven't.
Yeah, don't give out
we're
any
not gonna
secrets.
Right,
right
we
now.
haven't agreed on that. But what we know our capacity for what it takes us to do the September festival, which is significant. But where else can we add value to the community, and where else can we do programming? And that may be more bringing in. Like a single author event that we could do in the first or second quarter. We do one community reads program right now where we invite an author back to our festival with a new work to do 2 days of programming and offer that free to the general public, and that's been very successful. And that idea actually came out of discussions that we had during COVID and started it the first 2 years online, and then have now moved it into on-site, in-person events. What else might we be able to do in the schools? We go into the schools the first that for last weekend in September, but that's early on in the season, in the school year. What else might we be able to do in the schools that doesn't focus on September, but could be later in their first semester or something in the second semester as well? So what else might be possible? Also, we've been talking about how do we grow our audience? How do we grow the next generation of festival attendees? And what does that look like? And who are we competing against to try to get those people in now? But what can we do to salt their oats, so to speak, and provide programming that may interest them, but that has to be looked at differently because they're trying to manage young families and school schedules on weekends and sports schedules on weekends. So how do we look at those groups as well to grow that audience? So those are some of the big things that we're looking at. And we're always looking at new creative ways and fun development.
I have to take a sidebar. This episode of the BLTnT podcast is sponsored by Oxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. And powered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network. The salt your oats comment, I heard that for the first time on a podcast this morning that I was listening to while I was doing my hair.
Okay.
And I had never heard that before, but it's
okay.
you can lead a horse to water, but
but
you can't make him take a drink.
Right.
But you can salt his oats.
Yes,
Right, which can
exactly.
encourage that.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that comment, and I can't believe I've gone 47.999 years without knowing that.
Well,
You must be
early
having a
happy
birthday.
birthday. Happy birthday
No,
soon.
in a week. Yeah, my brother's birthday is today. The
Oh,
day
it
we're
is?
shooting.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you told me.
Yeah. Make you look good. You can call
Yeah,
us. You know,
thank
I was
you.
just thinking about you.
Yeah.
Is it
Happy
your
birthday.
So I digress. I forgot what
Well,
I was
and
going to
one
ask
of the
you
things, too, that I can say that what has really been beneficial from the governance and fiduciary standpoint that the board takes on is then that really allows us as staff to carry out the work of the festival.
Right.
And we look at these new priorities that we have that may not be brand new to us, but their current iteration is a little bit different. And it allows us to focus on one or two things each year that we can be successful with, instead of giving us this long litany of 4 different areas and 5 goals under each of those areas that we have to fulfill. That we can't. I mean, we are tasked with the operations of the organization, and this planning and this strategic planning is helping us be more efficient as an organization. So the system becomes the solution of seeing our success once again.
And an example, we were very committee heavy a few years ago, and we're not now. We've just it streamlined it.
because the staff is so involved.
And just we've grown and we realized that isn't the most efficient use of our time. And we were not communicating committee to committee like we should have. And being the size we are, it's working much better.
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting how you learn these things, only by going through them, right? And you go, okay, why are all these fully committed people? why are we not able to, accomplish this goal? Well, then you go back to, like Amy says, well, there must be a system that works. And Amy also brought something up to me the other day, which I really made me feel like connected even more with you, was there's a humility to you as well. I mean, you're very passionate, very strong about this organization, but I had brought something up about it, and you said, you know what, we're not unique. There's other book festivals in the world or all over the world. And I thought, you know what, that's really great when you admit that, right? Because you could take a very successful HVAC company, and the person could think, I'm splitting the atom different than anybody else on earth is able to do. And that's not really true. Now you guys have some great uniqueness or great unique qualities, which is the location of this, and of course the people involved. So we're not underscoring any of that. But I just love the humility that you said, you know what, and I work with those people and I talk to those other groups, and you collaborate, right? And so that to me is that humility of working with the peers, across the nation on their festivals, or maybe even across the world. I don't know. But can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. If you Google book festivals in the United States, you will get a very extensive list. And you will get organizations that have been in operations for decades. So as we're just approaching our second decade, I'm continually looking at what other festivals are doing to find ideas that can work for us or that might be applicable. What we're also doing is we're always asking authors who are coming to our festival, what have you seen at other festivals that you really liked to do or saw that were successful and that might work for us? And so if we can find ideas that we can establish here in our own way, in our own environment, then all the better. We don't need to create the wheel. For example, we have a happy hour on Saturday afternoon after all the programming is done, and we bring together all the authors in one place. We set up a couple bars, the pop-up bookstores in the same facility, and people have a chance to buy their book, interact with the author, and get their book signed. Well, that idea came from one of my favorite authors, Jim Lynch, who came to our very first festival, who said, I did this event, and we did a brunch happy hour, and lots of people drank mimosas, and we sold a lot of books, and it was really fun. And we thought, hey, that's a great idea. We could do that. And it was a way for people to interact with the authors one more time, because maybe they didn't get their book signed right after their panel discussion, or the long was line, and they said, I can go back and do this later. So it provided a service, and it helps us create more connections with the authors and the attendees, and it helps us sell books and get books in people's hands. So that was exciting. I also work with local organizations and other nonprofits that become really valuable. So even though we're the only book festival like ours in the state of Michigan, we're the only annual event. Calvin University has a fabulous festival called the Festival of Faith and Writing that they've been doing since the early 90s, but they do it every 2 years.
Okay.
But 3-day format. Wonderful. There have been things in Ann Arbor, but they've been absorbed by the Ann Arbor Public Library that are doing things, but just single day, like the Carytown Book Fest. But we're the only ones in a significant mileage radius that is doing this kind of event. But there's also a lot of really good nonprofit arts and culture organizations in the community. And I belong to the Northwest Michigan Arts and Culture Network, and actually sit on their board. And we just had a conference and a summit in Traverse City just last week, with organizations from 10 different counties in Northwest Michigan. So we're talking too and sharing information. So somebody may be doing something in a gallery that can relate to somebody's doing something in a museum who's doing something in an art park. So all the collaborative effort is huge in this world. And I think it's been huge for us because we don't want to do things alone. We want to collaborate as much as possible, but we're not competing against anybody. So why wouldn't we share our information? Why wouldn't we help people? Why wouldn't we talk about where have you found success in CRMs? We were talking about CRMs and how important those are now for us and being able to keep track of information, and the security aspect of how we're collecting donations and how important that is for our donors.
Well, we have to dig in and talk about the security. That's good. You told me you're using a platform, Salesforce.
Well, yes.
And you're keeping data sacred and
We are.
and secure, and that's why one of the reasons why you're using a platform like that. So, as
Yeah.
a cybersecurity person,
Very good.
high five
Yes.
to you.
Yes.
But you know what the underlying tone or the underlying message that I keep hearing from what you're talking about is, and by the way, I think I might have lied to you. I told you I didn't know that much about sports. I still don't, but I do know about Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba theory. Are you familiar with that? Which is you get better and better every day.
Right.
You know, we had talked about that with you guys, and obviously everything that we've talked about is with for the betterment of this organization and for achieving its mission of, you know, bringing cultural richness and that to the region. Now, I'm going to let you give that mission out in just a couple of minutes, but so hold it. I know you know it. You told me that that the feedback you get, you really get no negative feedback, but that you kind of push it onto yourselves to go back to this. Debrief to Win is the title that comes to me. I know you had your own title, but I was in a talk with Richard Cujo Teschner, is a military pilot who teaches business crowd all about debriefing to win, whether it's a postmortem, you know, on something negative, or if it's something went well, what else could we do better? And I loved when you told me about that. So can you share how you guys go about it, and what do you call it?
Well, it's just our evaluation process. I can't remember if we talked.
Plus Delta Plus or Plus Delta.
That I
you call
learned
it?
from my experience with Sprint, because
Okay.
in all my past experience, evaluation was always a huge part of everything we did. And then when we got involved, Sprint had a whole system that every event that we did was evaluated with a Plus Delta. So what did you do well? What do you want to continue to do? And what can you do better? And it wasn't what went wrong. It was, how do we make this better? And so we have incorporated that with our systems here, where we evaluate. The board does an evaluation. We've asked our attendees, our authors, our moderators, our volunteers. So everybody's giving us feedback, and we're fortunate where usually there's multiple glowing reviews, and everybody says, I can't think of one thing that you can do better. As a couple of our authors said, I have no notes. I have no notes to tell you what to do better, and we love that. And can I just share a couple of evaluations? These are a couple comments that have come in over the years from our authors. One says, I'm a battle-scarred veteran of 34 years worth of literary conventions, banquets, and festivals all across the U.S. and Canada. The Harbor Springs Festival of the Book is hands down the warmest, best organized, best staffed, and most enjoyable of any I've attended.
Wow.
That's great. I love that. This is my favorite. The entire enterprise was a model of intelligent creation and logistical finesse, executed with seamless grace by inspired leadership and a diligent company of welcoming volunteers. Love that.
Should be proud of that one.
Yeah. And so our staff, this is our staff. This isn't me. This is the staff, our volunteers, of things that happen. So that's what's so exciting. So we get glowing reviews, but our staff will have 10 to 15 pages of things we want to do better.
That's great, you know, because you know, we can kind of believe our own bullshit too, right? If we're not careful, and we can say, oh, everybody loves us, so we're getting 5-star reviews. We know that there's somebody out there who, you know, who maybe felt slighted or whatever, and we just know we can do better, right? And if we don't dig in and do better, then it's going to fail eventually, right? There's that old statement, you know, you're either growing or you're dying, right? Well, if you just kind of rely back on your laurels at all times, you're not growing. And so I just think that that's really cool, because you're getting all these kind of 5-star reviews, but you're taking it upon yourselves to say, yes, and thank you, thank you very much, and I know we can do better, right? We're going to continue to exceed expectations, and I just love that about the that consistent desire to be better. How does that apply at the board level, would you say, Elise?
It applies maybe not as directly as it applies at the staff level, but we do hear, and we like to hear the positive. But to your point, Matt, I always like to hear the negatives too, because I think it makes you grow. And while I like to hear the negatives, I don't want to overburden Amy with some of the nitty gritty with those.
Of course.
So we can do a broad brushstroke and say, yeah, we heard some negative things on this. We know we can do better. Let's not dwell on it. Let's just be positive, look at it, move on, and try to polish it. And that's where I think my role in the board is to take that approach when we have things that are not perfect. And I'm hoping that works for you all.
Well, I think that especially with like in IT, right? All of the people that work for me are very passionate technologists. All the people, I mean, you're not signing up. You're not signing up as a staff member or a volunteer of this unless you have some passion for the book, right, or for the underlying, meaning of that to the individual. So I can imagine that in your world that it gets very passionate. Where a board member, you've got to be. I mean, even for you, you've got to be like self-disciplined to go. Okay, wait, no, that I have to leave that to Amy and her team.
Yes.
I can't go into, even though I might feel super passionately about it. So I think that takes restraint, right, at the board level to do that. And I think that's exemplary of a good board.
Well, and I think that's one of my goals in this position right now is to get us to that level where we don't get so focused on one little negative, and let's address it, polish it, move on, and know that we have to work on it. And because that can be very disruptive and take too much time.
The president of my company, she makes me go away and do these field trips like this so that I don't go in there and meddle. We joke that it's nose in, hands out, right? And I know that you do a lot of that at Nubs Nub, right? So it's great that you can bring those experiences and bring that behavior to something like this that's so special. Let's go back and put you on the spot and have you tell us the mission of this festival.
Right now, it is inspiring readers of all ages and celebrating the culture of books in a beautiful part of the world.
I like it. I used the word, and I globbed onto yesterday the culture piece, right? And we talked about that a region like this could be looked at and people can say, oh, it's a wealthy area, right? But we can also look and say, no, the broader area is very diversified, okay? And this is very important to enrich culture across all different demographics. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think it's really important as we look wherever we end up living or what feeds our souls, what makes us excited to get up in the morning, and what can we participate in, either where we can, Elise has talked a lot about giving back, and where can you do that? And when you look at this region, we're fortunate to have a fabulous Crooked Tree Arts Center. We have the Great Lakes Center for the Arts that has started pretty around the same time that we've been developing things. And to have a book festival, there's a fabulous, there are art residencies. Goodhart Artist Residency has this fabulous place up in Goodhart. So when you look at this, if you come to this place and say, could I live here? Could I be a part of this community? If I'm coming from someplace else that's had a rich cultural experience, we can confidently say, yes, you can find places because we as a community have committed to offering the culture and the arts. We want to introduce first graders to award-winning picture book authors. We want to give them that opportunity to take that book home and put it on their own shelf and say, I met this author. I know why they drew that dog just like they did. And what a memorable experience that is for them. And to be able to hang on to that and grow. We want to have people who walk away from our event and say, I was in a conversation with somebody standing in line for a cup of coffee after a session with Elise Graham, and oh my gosh, did you get that? Did you understand that? What did you think about this? And to be able to be inspired to have those kind of conversations, I think is so important of what we're trying to offer. Most people can't get out to places to see this type of event. I mean, they're not going to or traveling on a regular basis to other places where these offerings are being made. Authors are traveling all over the place, but sometimes you just don't connect, or you don't miss, or you're not looking for it. But knowing that we can bring the breadth and depth of this fabulous curated program to people that they can experience, how fabulous is that for a cultural experience and a cultural community?
I love to see how jazzed up you get when you're talking about
I
this.
like my job.
I keep thinking, the statement I had in my head was you've just definitely fallen in love with the mission from the standpoint, especially from the book standpoint. So I want to kind of give a little bit of a comparison here, contrast is when you got out of grad school, you busted out 29 books that you read in 2.5 months.
Yes.
Okay, that's crazy. Good job.
Thank you.
I don't know how you did that.
Lots of time in the hammock.
Okay, I was going to say, or a lot of caffeine or something like that. And Elise, you're self-described a couple of different times here of that. I'm not as into books at the same level as Amy, right? But your love is culture. Right. And then you also love the governance piece of things and adding structure to it. Let's talk about that kind of hearing your passion of the cultural piece that we talked about, because you've been in this region for a long time. And that's been really your, like, if I was to pick, like, what's the undertone or what's the common theme for you? It's enriching culture. Like we've talked about that at Nub's Knob at your ski resort that you are a partner in, that you're a steward of it, right? You don't even consider yourself an owner in a way,
Right.
Can you talk about that? About how you feel that you're a steward of this? Even though, like, if I was to put you on the scale, I'd go, Amy, book lover.
Yeah.
Elise, book liker.
Yes.
Something like that.
Well, yeah, I'd like to speak to that because in listening to both of you the last minute or so, in our business, entry is costly. Skiing equipment, taking the time, the ticket, the whole thing. I shouldn't say that, but so we have developed more cross-country skiing, et cetera, because it's an easier entry into the sport. But I'm thinking about reading, and we all know we're seasonal up here, and it can get gloomy and cold part of the year. And to me, reading is easy entry. It's accessible, and you can do it 12 months of the year. So I'm looking at it like that too, as kind of a counterbalance to all the other activities that go on up here.
Yeah.
And I just think the accessibility, and it's there right at our fingertips. Why not jump in? So I love the fact that the festival promotes reading and literature and whatnot that complements everything else that we do in this community because we are so seasonal.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed for myself, I'm very energized by people and by activity in general. And so that weekend after Labor Day, I go into like a depression because I go out in the bay and there's nobody here, And so, like you said, there's where
it's another sport.
There's where the book fills in,
Mm-hmm.
right? In those downtimes. I know a lot of people love that downtime, but I need that constant action.
Can I just add one thing to that? Speaking of downtime.
No, you can't.
Okay.
No, please.
Yeah. So one of the pillars of starting the festival was to be an economic stimulus to the community. And we know Harbor Springs doesn't need there's no other reason you don't need another reason to come in the summer. So the founders of the organization looked at the shoulder season. So summer's done, right? The bay is a little quiet, right? And leaf peeping season hasn't started yet. The cars are not on M119 going north to the Tunnel of Trees. And what became really important was to pick a weekend where nothing else was going on. And let's make it a weekend where it's an economic driver for the community. And that's exactly what has happened. Last year, our economic impact survey showed $1.5 million. Okay. And I think that's low, to be totally honest. But that's what this weekend event, our signature event, is doing for this community, is being an impact an economic impact
Well,
driver.
and I think we would
and that's
know,
so
we,
important.
We would have to know that that's low because we know that someone came to this region and fell in love with it and bought a house, right? And so, it had to have happened at least once.
Mm-hmm.
So we can estimate that number is low based on that.
Yeah, the number of conversations we hear from authors talking to their significant other on the phone going,
gotta move
honey, we're moving to Harbor Springs.
The other impact, though, and I know that this wasn't necessarily, part of the actual mission or whatever, but it's definitely a byproduct. We know that Michigan has ranked fairly low in the country in its reading scores, and so anything you're doing to bring reading awareness and reading enjoyment or proliferation of reading to the younger generation is immensely important.
It's huge. And when the festival was started, we were putting authors into schools. We didn't have the book component of it. We started that at a very, very small level the second year. And each year it's just grown significantly, which has been really excited. And you're right, we're a literary organization. This is a literary festival, but anything that we do and to promote literacy is always so important.
Sure.
And we love that. And giving, as we've said, giving students a chance to get a book that they can call their own, that they get to take home, that they get to share with their family, that they get to put on the shelf. We know from studies that has an impact on their future education.
Great. Yeah. Wasn't there was a statement or something you'd made?
There's a
about
huge international study that's been done that shows the one common denominator across every aspect of a family's life or a child's ability to advance in education is the number of books in the home library and access to books there.
Huh. Yeah, because everybody has access to a public library,
Right.
But it's actually goes back to how many books are in the home.
Right.
Wow.
Exactly. Does socioeconomic status of the parents
Right.
doesn't matter.
Huh.
It's books on the shelf.
Huh.
And so if we're one of the few organizations in the area that's doing that, so we can't stop. So we're
Interesting.
doing it again.
People who have watched the podcast that I've done with others, I talk a lot about the vision for our company. It's to build a legacy organization that outlives the founders of our organization, and that is a destination for employees, clients, vendors, partners, so that people have a clamoring towards it. What's it like for you guys, for both of you, to be a part of an organization that you'll never see the end, right? To know that you're a contributor of the stewardship of the time that you're here. What's that like for you, knowing that it will live on, beyond you guys?
Oh, I could speak all day to that.
Go ahead and start. We have all day.
For me personally, but I'm in a for-profit world, I really am stewarding, and you use that word a lot, the next generation to let them know the values of the founder, which was not me, but to let them really understand his values. And I want to steward those values, and hopefully they will get it and go on and on. I want the business to grow and develop and be fresh. But they've always got to respect the people. It's the people that make the organization. And I never want the next generation to lose sight of the people part of it. And that would be the legacy that I want to leave, is taking care of your people.
I'm hearing two things out of that, though, too. One thing you said, and I think this is very easy for all of us, especially when we talk about life cycles of organizations. It's for current gen to knock previous gen, right? Like, I'm going to do it so much better.
Right.
And I don't think that is not what you're saying.
No.
You're actually, what you're saying is respect the people, all constituents involved, including the history of this place and the values that were established early on.
Right. And take the characteristics of the founder, polish them and grow them and make them better than they wanted them.
There you go.
I guess that would be the
Love it. Better than ever expected.
better than you left it, like anything else.
Yep.
Yep.
Great.
So Amy And I are going to leave this better than we left it, right?
There you go.
Exactly. And I think for me, as I look at the festival, I want to make sure that, one, we're looking back to say, when we look at however a mission statement gets edited and refined and as you go forward with that we always look back, that we understand that this is in Harbor Springs, and this is the wonder of Harbor Springs is always going to be a part of everything that we do. It could get bigger. We could start expanding and doing things in other places, but it's Harbor Springs and the uniqueness and the intimacy that we've been able to provide. And that's one thing that the authors always comment about, is just that it's big enough, but not too big. It still allows people a chance to interact. It makes things and people accessible to one another. And it can only get better. Our legacy, it will be better. It will be better in its programming. It will be better in its operations, but it won't be just big for big's sake. And it will always acknowledge Harbor Springs as the place that makes it unique.
That's great.
And that will be around in decades to come.
I think you're both fine stewards of the organization. That's my read. If somebody was listening or watching and wanted to serve in any small way, what would the recommendations be? I mean, I would imagine funding would be something that people could add, and they wouldn't have to lift a finger.
No. Our website has all of that information, and it talks about opportunities to volunteer, talks about ways to support the organization, talks about ways to attend the festival. We're selling out. It's when we begin ticket sales, which will begin in the middle of July. It's a quick process. So if you want to attend, you do need to register. We do have a few ways to come to events, like the happy hour that I talked about. That's always free to the general public. We do some children's programming at the library that's free. And we make everything accessible. Our registration this year is $25.
Okay.
Yeah. So because we still are committed to making it accessible for people. And children and students are always free.
Okay.
So we want to make that happen. But our website has all the information and more that you would need to know about the festival and ways to participate. So
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. I mean, seems like, in a noisy world here, right, that the stories are still connecting us, and whether it's the stories that we're telling on the podcast or the stories that your writers are telling. So this has been a beautiful time to spend with you guys. And is there anything else you want to make sure that others know about this, or just have them come to Harbor Springs and check it out?
indeed, just that. So
Let's do it. Okay.
thank you for your time.
Thank you both for being here. This has been great.
Thank you.